all this stuff out either. But I really do think that it is an opportunity. I understand the objections that the mayor has written out, and I understand that those need to go on the record, but I also understand that there is the opportunity for us to relook at this because it does require 6-2 vote to overturn it. And I think that that is something that we all should consider, and we all should work together. I think you've heard from different people here tonight that they would like to ask you as a group. You know, my kids have this little thing from Miss Rosemary from the Christian school. They said, everything I needed to know in life I learned in kindergarten. Sometimes I feel like you all are up here in kindergarten and you must have missed her class on that. Because it's like you are up here for a job to all work together and not to be divided between a 5-3 or whatever. And I don't think some of your, and it's been termed a tax. I think you could better term the CID and the 1% a user fee. Because it's just like several have come up and said that they've come to understand. It's only for those of them, those people who want to use it. If we don't want to use it and we don't want it to be a tax per se of our town, then you don't use it. You still have the right to not use it. And it's not something that gets passed on you, whether you like it or not, because you have a choice to use it or to not use it. Yeah, I could get off on that. But anyway, I think that people are right, that we are missing an opportunity because I didn't have a lot of economic development in law school, but I do know there's a lot to be considered there. I do know that Love's wouldn't do what a business is called due diligence, and Mr. Mayor, I know as a CPA, you know this. They figured it out, and for whatever nice reasons, to go ahead and go a little extra mile to try to put a CID in place to give us something that continues on in our comprehensive plan, and I mentioned this last time. Have you all reviewed that again? Do you know what the comprehensive plan is? Do you know what the people that you hired to put that comprehensive plan in place and what they're trying to do? And you're thwarting it. I don't know why you can't see that, but, and there are always more ways to skin a cat than one. And so if this is gonna go through and it's gonna go that way, then I guess you'll have to live with that decision, but I would ask you, Mr. Dickerson and Mr. Long, to consider your votes. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is John T. I live at 501 Younger Drive. I've been to some of these meetings and listened to most of the board on what they like and what they dislike about this. One of the problems that I see is, as a board, you guys are not working together. I've seen this for the past 12 years that I've been here. It's always been a fight between certain people of the board. It's always been a fight. You guys need to get together and listen and work together to do what's right for this city. As far as the CID, I'm not going to get onto that or go over that. That's something you guys need to work out. You guys have to get this together for the citizens of Harrisonville. As far as truck stops, the Saps Brothers is in the county. There's not a place in Harrisonville that I can fuel my truck up or even park my truck in the city of Harrisonville. I spend hundreds of dollars outside the city of Harrisonville on fuel because I can't spend it in Harrisonville. Is the CID good? I don't know, again. But we got to have something coming to this town as far as businesses and willing to work with other businesses. That is the biggest problem that Harrisonville has. When I moved here 12 years ago, I knew the codes officer's name before I knew the mayor's name. That's bad. As a town, you should be able to work with somebody. I go into different small towns all the time, and I deal with some of their board members and different people in their cities, and I don't have near the problem that some people have from this board. And I'm not just saying this board that's here now, I'm talking about previous boards and for the past 12 years that I've been here. So we need to start, and I urge each and every one of you to give out the olive branch, to talk to one another, and to get your differences over. We as citizens are tired of hearing one thing and then another thing happen. That's happened more than not. I've sat on the implementation committee. I sat on different committees that addressed this board back 7 years ago or so, 7, 8 years ago. I do not see any different change from that. We spent over $50,000 on it, and very few changes happened. So what we did as citizens went out the door because the city could not change anything. They were already into several things. Just like the water from Kansas City. The water from Kansas City cost the city a lot of money, but we can't look at the past. We've got to go forward. We've got to go with what's going on in the future. If we live in the past, we do not have a future. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak tonight? Seeing no one at this time, I will close the public participation, and we will move ahead for the special event permit. Oh, excuse me. Approval of the minutes, I apologize, Mark.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to have a change made to the minutes as they were written. On page 3, it shows me recusing when I voted yes.
Yes, sir.
That was the,
On the pawn shop.
pawn shop, okay. Any other changes to the minutes?
Other than that change, I would like to approve.
Motion from Alderman Coburn to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a second from Alderman Bowman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of the minutes. Now we will move on to the special event permit.
John, are you in the hallway?
Someone get Chief Hofer to take, there he is. That's right. Good evening, sir. That is correct.
We didn't.
Yes,
You didn't get the memo.
Harrisonville Public School Foundation to do their 5K run walk. They've done this annually for several years. It's in conjunction with homecoming. It's the day after the homecoming football game. It is a fundraiser for the We've had no problem with the event in the past. We're recommending approval again this year. They will start at the high school, take the residential streets through town, through Sandy Lakes, out to the golf course. We are recommending.
Motion from Alderman Miller to approve. Do I have a second? Second from Alderman Coburn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to the next item.
This is an event permit for another 5K. This is for life issues. Ministry of Heartland Baptist Fellowship, they want to do a 4.1 mile walk. This is the third year for this event. They will be starting at the Justice Center and walking to the church. Like I said, third year, we've had no problems in the past, and we're recommending
Any discussion? I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion to approve.
A motion from Alderman Bowman.
Second.
Second from Alderman Milner. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Another special event.
After all that exercise, let's get some candy. So this is a community-wide treat. Again, another event we've done for several years. It's actually the Rotary, along with the Parks and Rec Board, put this on. We do it on the square. We block off the whole square. Thousands of children and adults attend. Very nice event. We're asking for October 25th, the Sunday before. Halloween again this year from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock. This will be put off the square box with lockers. So that no problems or concerns with it in the past.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion from Alderman Copeland, second from Alderman Stoll. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Next one.
Next one up is a class reading, and the class of 1965. They would like to use the parking lot the city owns behind the high school. Again, but in conjunction with homecoming, which is the 50-year reunion, they would like to have a tailgate block off a little more of the parking lot area. Have a tailgate. I asked them if there would be alcohol served. They told me no. We have not had anything like this in the past.
You can have your officers in case they get out of hand and get rowdy.
Or not. I was born in 1965, sir.
Oh. Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion from Alderman Milner, a second from Alderman Coburn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So passes. Council Bill 055.
Council Bill 055 is a resolution authorizing the city administrator to enter into an agreement between the city of Harrisonville, Missouri and CAS R9, the school district relating to police services for school resource officers for the high school and middle school for the year 2015-2016 school year.
Thank you, sir. This is a contract agreement between the school district and the police department to provide school resource officers, one in the high school, one in the middle school. We've provided this to the school since 2004. They have contributed each year. This year we've gone from $29 to $30 an hour per officer. And that's to cover part of their wages and benefits and equipment. We recommend approval again for this year. The only change to the agreement, which was originally, contract originated in 2010. This year, had Mr. Mauer just reviewed to see if there's any changes that we had. There were none, we just updated the wage, and we recommend approval. Any questions?
Any discussion on this item?
I've got a question on page, packet page 22. On the contract, it says this contract for police services agreement made and entered into as of this day of June 2015. Will that be June or?
It will be June because the high school, or I meant to say that, the school board approved this on June 30th.
Very good.
So they've already approved it and signed it.
So in other words, we're approving something.
It's either us or the school board, one's got to approve it second, so
Okay.
it doesn't go into effect until August.
Yeah, I know, I realize that, but when I seen that June date and realized we were into July, I have a little bit of trouble with attorneys.
It's just the effective date, that's all it is.
Okay,
That's all it is.
that'd be
It's-
okay then.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Seeing no further discussion, I entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make the first motion.
Second.
I have a motion from Alderman Bowman and a second from Alderman Miller. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So Council Bill 055 becomes Resolution R-033. South Commercial Street Annual Asphalt Overlay Program. Good evening, Mr. Jacobs.
I'll come to you to ask that you allow us to use the money that we have budgeted for 2015 to overlay South Commercial Street. As far as that money, if you approve it, we'll get the budget, we'll get bids, and we'll just see how far it gets, and we'll come back to you and see if you approve it. So we'll start at South, at Butler on South Commercial, and depending on where the bids are, because it's actually a short stretch for asphalt, even going up to Washington Street. So we'll have to see what the bids are. But if you approve them, we'll go that far, we'll find out what's our cost. We have $150,000 in
Any discussion on this item? Motion from Alderman Dickinson,
Second.
second from Alderman Coburn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Council Bill 056.
Council Bill 056 is a resolution authorizing the city administrator of the city of Harrisonville to enter into a contract with Integrated Electronics to upgrade the Harrisonville Community Center AV system at a cost not to exceed $26,509.50.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. As stated in your memo, several weeks ago, there was a lightning strike at the community center, which damaged several areas of community center equipment. Most of those areas, such as the sauna, HVAC system, have been and are being repaired. These expenses have been sent to our insurance carrier, and we will pay a $1,000 deductible for those repairs. The damage to the audiovisual system has really impacted our service capabilities to the rental rooms and needs repair. The two options listed in your packet show the cost to restore the system as it was. A second option, which would be a full system upgrade. With the community center almost 10 years old, much of the equipment is now out of date, and an upgrade would enhance our services to facility users for devices they often make must use, such as iPads, notepads, Chrome pads, which we cannot currently accommodate. The damage caused by the lightning strike presents an opportunity to offset some of the costs to make these upgrades. The cost of $13,656. The cost would be included in the mid-year budget amendment brought forward to the board. The park board unanimously recommends the upgrade to the AV system with a total expense of $26,509.50. And again, about half of that being covered by the insurance company. And I will be happy to answer any questions at this time.
I know we all experienced the issues at the last meeting, and I've been there for a presentation where you have to be up close with a laptop. This will definitely open that room up for presentations in the future. I think it's definitely a wise move to go ahead and upgrade while we have the opportunity. But anybody else would like to discuss this item? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Motion from Alderman Dickinson, second from Alderman Stoll. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Council Bill 056 becomes Resolution R034. Council Bill 057.
Council Bill 057 is a resolution to accept amendments to the pay compensation structure for fiscal year 2016.
Each year at this time, we take this issue up. It doesn't have an impact on the current budget because it is supposed to be effective as of January 1st, 2016. And the adjustments to the pay scale would only affect employees that are currently at the minimum for their pay grade, and as of January 1st, 2016, if that minimum pay goes up, then their pay would go up. Usually we have a handful of folks who fall into that situation, and you would see a 25-cent increase roughly in their pay. The entities included as comparable to the Harrisonville are listed on the attached sheet titled KC Metro Comparable Communities. These entities are similar in complexity, number of employees, or budget size to Harrisonville. Those that have submitted information for positions consistent with Harrisonville are included in the Advanced Comparison Detailed Report, also attached. The report is in order by job number, which is assigned by Mark. Within each job, data is listed in descending order on the midpoint of the pay range of that position for each entity. I look at Harrisonville's midpoint to be within 10% plus or minus of the average. If our midpoint is outside of this range, consideration is given to moving the position into a higher or lower pay range. A move is not automatic. A variety of variables impact this consideration, such as turnover rates for the position, difficulty in recruiting for the recent openings, if there are similar positions in the same pay grade that have pay that is in line with the survey. Is the data from the comparable communities current? And do we have a small number of comparable communities included in the average? How would other positions in the chain of command be impacted? In the end, we may choose no action and monitor the position until next year. I do not recommend moving any positions into a different pay grade this year. The pay range Ranges are in line with the survey, and therefore I recommend increasing the midpoint by 1%, or 30 cents per hour, to keep pace with inflation. This equates to an average increase of 1% for all of our pay ranges. This is in step with the 3-year weighted average ECI for wages only of 1.49% and the consumer price index of 0.86%. I looked at how well we compare in the Mark survey as a leading indicator for making pay scale adjustments, and looked to the indexes as a guide to what is a reasonable adjustment based upon inflationary impacts. The fact that our pay ranges are competitive with comparable communities is the primary reason for recommending only modest changes. By making modest changes every year, our pay structure should remain competitive, and major changes should not be needed down the road. Budget impact. Adoption of the revisions effective January 1st, 2016 prevents any impact on the current 2015 budget. The impact new pay scale has on a new year, on next year's budget 2016, is that an employee previously at the top of their pay range will now have a higher maximum wage limit, which affords them the opportunity to receive a pay increase. Currently, only 2 employees are at the top of their pay range. Employees with pay below the new minimum will have their wage increase to the new minimum as of 1/1/16. At this time, we expect that there will be fewer than 5 employees. The recommendation from staff is the procedures and standards employed during the review are consistent with the policy set out in section 4A of the personnel policy. The pay per position changes will sustain Harrisonville as market competitive. I recommend adopting the proposed pay scale changes as presented, effective 1/1/2016. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is there any discussion on this side? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve it.
Second.
A motion from Alderman Dixon, a second from Alderman Long. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Council Bill 057 becomes Resolution R-035. Council Bill 058.
Council 058 is a resolution authorizing the city administrator of the city of Harrisonville, Missouri to retain the legal burden of Missouri and Iowa for certain legal special litigation matters as needed. Not at all.
Okay, good.
As we discussed, I think last week, this provides approval for Zerger Mauer to take over 2 cases that the city is in litigation with CenturyLink on.
Any discussion? Questions?
It's just the CenturyLink litigation.
Correct.
I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Second?
I have a motion from Alderman Stoll, a second from Alderman Bowman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Council Bill 058 becomes Resolution R-036. Council Bill 059.
Council 059 is an ordinance amending ordinance 3251 of the city of Harrisonville, Missouri. First reading, Council Bill 059.
Good evening. This is basically an amendment to a grant from the Missouri Department of Transportation that was accepted by the board to cover 2 projects. One project being an airport development update and airport geographical service project, as well as the design portion of the hangar, the 2 south hangar area, the design portion of the asphalt program there that we have since decided to forego in the interest of using that money on the runway instead, since the runway project we have this year and need more of it. So this basically just reduces it and takes that component away while leaving the ALT project intact, which is actually almost.
Any discussion of this item? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to suspend the ruling and move Council Bill 059 to a second reading.
Make a motion to move to second reading.
Motion from Alderman Miller,
Second?
second from Alderman Stoll. We'll need a roll call, please.
Alderman Coburn.
Aye.
Alderman Coburn, aye. Alderman Milner.
Aye.
Alderman Milner, aye. Alderman Dickerson.
Aye.
Alderman Dickerson, aye. Alderman Long.
Aye.
Alderman Long, aye. Alderman Stoll.
Aye.
Alderman Stoll, aye. Alderman Stafford. Alderman Stafford, absent. Alderman Bowman.
Aye.
Alderman Bowman, aye. Alderman Dahlman. Alderman Dahlman, absent.
Council 059 is an ordinance amending ordinance 2251 of the city of Harrisonville, Missouri. Senate Council 059.
Alderman Milner. Aye. Alderman Milner, aye. Alderman Dickerson.
Aye.
Alderman Dickerson, aye. Alderman Long.
Aye.
Alderman Long, aye. Alderman Stoll.
Aye.
Alderman Stoll, aye. Alderman Stafford. Alderman Stafford, absent. Alderman Bowman.
Aye.
Alderman Bowman, aye. Alderman Dahlman. Alderman Dahlman, absent. Alderman Coburn.
Aye.
Alderman Coburn, aye.
And Council Bill 059 becomes ordinance 3320. Council Bill 060.
Council 060 is an ordinance to authorize the city administrator to execute the Missouri Highway and Transportation Commission state block grant agreement between the city of Harrisonville, Missouri, and the Missouri Highway Transportation Commission for grant funding for the airport payment maintenance project for the Lawrence Smith Memorial Airport in an amount of $56,975.
Earlier this year, the board has been approved to undergo two contracts with our current airport consultants, HW Lochner, one for design services and one for construction phase services. The runway maintenance program that we have going this year, in the total amount of $66,975. And this is basically just the approval of the grant to fund those at 95%.
Any discussion? I'll entertain a motion to suspend the ruling and move Council Bill 060 to the second reading.
I would move to suspend the rule and move it to the second reading.
Second.
I have a motion from Alderman Bowman and a second from Alderman Miller. We need a roll call again, please.
Alderman Dickerson.
Aye.
Alderman Dickerson, aye. Alderman Long.
Aye.
Alderman Long, aye. Alderman Stoll.
Aye.
Alderman Stoll, aye. Alderman Stafford. Alderman Stafford, absent. Alderman Bowman.
Aye.
Alderman Bowman, aye. Alderman Dahlman. Alderman Dahlman, absent. Alderman Coburn.
Aye.
Alderman Coburn, aye. Alderman Milner. Aye. Alderman Milner, aye.
Council Bill 060 is an ordinance to authorize the city administrator to execute the Missouri Highway and Transportation Commission state block grant agreement between the city of Harrisonville, Missouri and the Missouri Highway and Transportation Commission for grant funding for the airport pavement maintenance project for the Lawrence Smith Memorial Airport in amount not to exceed $66,975. Secretary Council Bill 060.
Alderman Dickerson.
Aye.
Alderman Dickerson, aye. Alderman Stafford. Alderman Stafford, absent. Alderman Coburn.
Aye.
Alderman Coburn, aye. Alderman Long.
Aye.
Alderman Long, aye. Alderman Bowman.
Aye.
Alderman Bowman, aye. Alderman Milner. Aye. Alderman Milner, aye. Alderman Stoll.
Aye.
Alderman Stoll, aye. Alderman Dahlman. Alderman Dahlman, absent.
And Council Bill 060 becomes ordinance 3321. We'll move on to review and preliminary approval of the 2016 objectives.
This is the first strategic planning step in the development of our budget for 2016. Based upon the city's goals and priorities that we went over during our retreat, we've developed objectives to further those goals, and they are put into a format that basically they are underneath of the most appropriate goal. So the first of our goals is an enhanced communication engagement with the community by expanding opportunities to inform and engage citizens in an open and participatory manner. The first item here is to enlist volunteers and city staff to assist in code enforcement. And the justification has been laid out. This is a objective that's been prepared by Alderperson Alderman, or Alderperson Bowman. We've had discussions with the police department, VIPS folks, and it's a very affordable objective that addresses code enforcement, which has been an issue during a number of discussions that we've had. It's also an area of concern on our citizen satisfaction survey. So, as the process that we follow in reviewing these objectives is we go basically one at a time. If we have any questions about them, we bring them up at this point. Staff is here to answer your questions, hopefully. If it requires additional information, we can hold off on giving the objective preliminary approval. But if it's basically, it comes down to a show of hands. If the board wants to keep it in, and we don't have any objections, then we move on. If there's someone who objects to it being in there, we're going to ask for a show of hands. And basically, the majority of folks say they want to leave it in, we'll leave it in. Majority say they want it out, take it out. So, any concerns about the first objective?
Well, I have a few objections to it. I really don't want, I'd rather have a person hired from the city around the code violations. I don't want somebody just driving in a car on the side, and since they don't work for the city, it makes me uncomfortable. Why would they listen to us if they don't want to do this power? If we're going to employ and coach people, we need to hire them. And not, are they going to listen to them? And they don't have to, they're just another citizen telling them that they got something wrong. And then I think it's a potential, I mean, I was just talking to Steve about liability, that they have some angry citizen, they're going to tell them that they don't do the law, and they decide to pull out their gun and make everybody crazy and shoot them, and be liable to that person to volunteer. I mean, that's consideration in my view nowadays. The other thing was, and would that build animosity in that kind of code enforcement? Like I said, I think it should be a person hired from the city that goes out and talks to people with code violations.
In my feeling, it's kind of like setting up organized vigilantes to go around and harass their neighbors. We went through this neighbor harassment bit in the past, and we're just now, I think, well, my neighborhood is starting to slacken down a little bit. We've got one individual that still is eyeballing everyone else, and I don't, personally, I don't care as long as my health isn't affected and everything. I went out and helped my neighbor a little bit because he wasn't able to do some of the stuff around his house. And I just don't think that we need to encourage vigilantes, and I think this is what we're doing.
We used to have people, when we had the proactive code enforcement, they were individuals, I don't know who they were, but individuals that lived in apartment buildings, and they just decided every day they'd just go out and look for code violations and turn them into jackknife, and then you go do something about it. And I find that not a good way to do code. If the people that are complaining are within the neighborhood of the complainee, then they are the ones you should call about the complaint. And because they are the people that have to live with the complaint. If they're not bothered with it, then the city should be bothered with it. But if the people from outside coming into a neighborhood that doesn't live there, I think resentment, and we're just kind of getting back to the resentment is dying down from when we used to approach this in a proactive way. I mean, complaints were a lot. I mean, my phone never stopped ringing from the city driving by and maybe on my grass, maybe move my car. I was driving all over town with things that they didn't think were right. And it really made a lot of resentment toward the staff and the city. And that's why I don't think it's a good idea.
Well, I'd like to address a couple of points that were made by my colleagues. When I was going door to door campaigning, a lot of people were concerned about neighbors who didn't keep up their properties. A lot of folks would say, you know, I take care of my property, but, you know, right down the street or right next door, people don't take care of theirs, and that affects my property value. And why can't the city do something about that? So as I researched that, and I learned through the past citizen satisfaction surveys that this is a chronic problem in Harrisonville, that there are a lot of folks that don't take pride in their property and hence don't take care of their property. As I talked to citizens about that, a lot of people said, I just wish there were more people driving around, you know, more codes enforcement, more people looking around and looking for offenses. Well, when I talked with city administrator, and we found out that we have a part-time staff person who does not proactively drive around looking for offenses, but does respond to citizen calls, that the department changed from being proactive to being reactive some time ago, and the position was reduced to have our part-time person. So I thought, why not provide an additional set of eyes to our staff? And so as we talked with the police chief and we talked with Mr. Moody, and we determined that, you know, the police department has a volunteer group, the VIPs. We have now about 20 of those people who drive patrol. They do things in the city as they're volunteering, and it would be very easy for them to just be another set of eyes to see things that are a concern. So as we talked about that idea and we massaged how we were going to do it, we created a job description. We talked to the VIPs at their last monthly training meeting, and we identified that this was something that they could do. So how it would work with a volunteer, whether it's a volunteer from the police department or it's somebody else, that individual does not engage the citizen. So there's no concern for liability of somebody shooting somebody, because that individual, that volunteer, doesn't even step out of their car. They know what to look for. They've been trained by the codes officer, so they know what the violations are. And if they see something that's a concern of theirs, they will make a note, and they will then route that note to the codes enforcement officer, who will follow the regular routine, the regular procedure that the city has in place for following up with property owners who have an issue with a codes violation. So I care about that. I have a colleague up here who says he doesn't care about that. I care about it because I think it's the appearance of the city, and it's pride in ownership, and it's maintaining property value. If I take care of my home, I want my neighbors to do the same thing. So that's where the idea came from. That's how it evolved. I don't see where it poses any liability to the city. Mr. Mauer, I would ask you for an opinion on that.
As a lawyer, I could fashion a scenario that
Of
where,
course you
yes, somebody could file a lawsuit over it. But typically, if it's just a volunteer, they're not acting under the color of state authority. We haven't authorized them to do anything.
Correct.
So I don't see where there would be, you know, a significant risk that they would get, some act by a volunteer would get us sued. The suggestion that somebody might pull out a gun and shoot them, I guess that could happen. I would like to think not, but in that scenario, I don't see how the city would be responsible for that. We're not making them go out and do these calls, so I don't see much of a risk. But like I said, I could fashion a scenario where somebody would sue.
Certainly.
If I might, reading through the justification, it says, enlisting volunteers to assist staff in documenting code violations and perform compliance inspections would enable the city to return to a proactive code enforcement approach versus the complaint-driven approach currently employed due to a limited part-time staffing budget. This has 27 hours per week. The additional cost would be fuel. Volunteers would document the location and condition with digital pictures and convey this information to the code enforcement staff. Staff would attempt to contact property owners prior to following up with written notifications, which is our practice. volunteers would re-inspect following the deadline for compliance. In addition, the city staff that work throughout the community will forward potential violations to code enforcement staff as well. So the employees becoming that are out and about working also contribute. So it's designed to keep the contact with the staff, the code enforcement staff. Well, some of the things I think would be easy as they're doing the other inspections is tall grass. Garbage that's been put out in someone's yard. Those are common violations that we deal with. You could have a car that's parked inappropriately. That's one that's not unusual. That's possible. They can document whether it has a tag on it or not. But basically, they gather information, and that makes it more proactive than waiting for someone to call.
And if I might add, at the last council meeting, Jim Proctor addressed the board and said that he was driving an individual through town who was interested in starting a business here, and that he had some concerns and some embarrassment at the physical appearance of the streets as he was driving this individual through town. So I just think it's something that we need to look at as we talk about wanting to attract business people here, wanting to attract business managers here, about the appearance of our city.
Was that comment made about property owners or about the city not mowing their grass?
No, it was not made about the city not mowing their grass. I don't recall that. But I'm actually meeting with him tomorrow evening to get his additional ideas.
Well, I can remember years ago, we went to the proactive based on responses in the survey. And it kind of opened Pandora's box as far as the complaints. And there was a lot of people in saying, you know, hey, I get a letter every other day for this or that, and my neighbor gets nothing. I personally know I have a place in my backyard, I pile sticks, I have a yard with lots of large trees. You know, any storm like we've had this year, I have to stack the sticks up until I get rid of them. My neighbor would do the same thing by his garage. Inevitably, every year, he'd get letter after letter about he was creating a habitat for wildlife and all these other things, and I have the same size pile sitting in my yard, no letters. So it was very apparent there was a targeting going on, and I think it got to the point where we probably got just as many complaints about the code's complaints as there actually being violations of the codes. Now, I'm all for the codes. They're there to protect your property, and I agree you should, you know, your neighbor doesn't have their property cleaned up, you don't like it, you want it cleaned up, you should have the avenue to report that. You should be able to get that taken care of. The exception to that rule is definitely the grass. I think that the grass is something that needs to be looked at. You know, if you know, we had a few years where they didn't have a regular mowing crew at the hospital, and I live up by the hospital, we get 14-inch grass up at the hospital. Well, now they've got a regular mowing crew. I think they got called upon a few times. I think the grass is something that's a little bit different scenario, and so I think a lot of people are unaware of being able to call and complain, and then afterwards, I don't know what the follow-up is exactly when they do complain, but some say they make a complaint and they never hear another thing about it. I think we need to do a better job of communicating with people who do make complaints on what's been done to help with their complaint. I know that we're bound by what are our ordinances, what are the rules. You know, sometimes somebody may not like something, but it fits in our rules, and that's just the way it goes. I mean, if you don't like that somebody parks a car in a certain spot, but it doesn't break the rules, that's how it is. I mean, it's a slippery slope. You have it both ways. You want to see your town clean, but you also don't want to irritate the citizens. So it's definitely a double-edged sword.
I think it would be, since these people are not gonna actually have physical contact or verbal contact with the places that they're going, you're just basically going to follow up, maybe on a complaint or something that they have seen on their own. I mean, I don't know why we couldn't give this a try. if it takes a little bit of a load off of our codes people and helps us get a little bit more under control the areas of town that people have complained about, my mother-in-law being one, then I think it's worth maybe giving it a try. If we get complaints about people, harassing people about what there is, then we definitely need to rethink about that.
I'm not against the concept, but I don't think it should be volunteer. I think we should hire a person to go out and fight people.
And that will be the case. The letters will come from the code enforcement officer.
But he has a physical scene.
Well, he'll see the photographs. I mean, if he has questions as to whether or not there's a violation, then he'll follow up himself. But if it's clearly a violation, the digital camera will tell you the date and the time that the picture was taken.
Will this actually decrease the workload for staff, or will it possibly increase, because they'll have, I mean, now, like you say, you're waiting for somebody to call and complain, which, I've had a neighbor that keeps a less favorable yard, which I'm fine with. I've known him for years. But, say somebody is all right with a neighbor that has something that maybe is a potential violation, but they're fine with it, and there's never been a complaint, all of a sudden that person gets a complaint, well, now we're getting complaints that we weren't before. Is that going to increase the stress on staff, I guess, if we have more complaints? That's the question.
I think probably a little bit both. The thing is when we have heavier workload, we just try to accommodate, and we may run behind a little bit, but at least things don't go miss. So, we're happy to work with whatever you guys decide. I think we could handle that. If it gets too overwhelming, maybe we could just limit it to grass, but I honestly don't foresee that becoming that overwhelming, with the exception of maybe when the grass is really growing in the spring. That's all.
Now, do we still have someone drive around right now for the grass? I know we did at one time.
No.
Part-time.
When the board decides to go completely complaint driven, stop. Because that's the point where we wait for somebody to go complain to us, because it's complaint driven. So in that way, we don't drive the streets all the time. And even if we see something, we sit back and say, well, it's complaint driven, wait for somebody to call.
Okay, so good discussion, difference of opinion. Show of hands, who wants to get preliminary approval? Okay, that one dies. Next item, this is under improved community assets. Place a question on the 2016 ballot to discontinue collecting sales tax on motor vehicles. I realize that sounds a little unusual, but that is actually the way that the statute is written. State law now requires cities that have passed local sales taxes to put a second question on the ballot asking residents for approval to discontinue collecting sales taxes on the purchase of vehicles by November 2016, or the jurisdiction must cease collecting the sales tax. Unless a use tax has been approved by the city, state law will preclude a city with sales taxes in place from continuing the practice of sales tax being collected on vehicles. It is estimated that the city will see a decrease of $100,000 per year in sales taxes, which are used to support the payment of debt on the community center, as well as the community center operations, police services, fire and ambulance services, streets, sidewalks, stormwater maintenance, and all other services supported by the general fund. The link below takes you to the Missouri Municipal League's information page, which provides an in-depth explanation of the litigation and laws leading to this situation. This objective has an or, because you could either ask this question about the sales tax on vehicles, or you could ask a question about use tax. And use tax would allow you to continue the process of collecting sales tax on the purchase of vehicles as well. I provided the link, and I'm glad Mr. Mauer's here because it is a convoluted situation, and we are now up against our deadline. If you do nothing, then following, I think, March of 2017, the practice of collecting sales tax on vehicles purchased will just go away.
So, go ahead, Warren, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, it was my belief that the Missouri Supreme Court ruled on this, and that's why they had to use the term use tax instead of sales tax. And wasn't that 2 or 3 years ago?
It has finally worked its way through not only the court, but also then the legislature acted to try and correct it or change the statute to be consistent with what the Supreme Court said it needed to be to allow the practice to continue. And so they're not, the Supreme Court basically, as I understand it, it is quite convoluted, has basically said that the language utilized to authorize the tax was improper. And so it's not that you can't collect the tax, and it's not that there's something inherently wrong with collecting the tax, or that that anything was wrong with that. It was just the language used, as I understand it. And so the legislature went back in and said, well, okay, then we have to empower if we have to empower the cities to adopt a new language, then we will. And so if there's no new tax involved that hasn't been collected or being collected, it's just giving the citizens a chance to say, yes, we want to continue to do this, to fund our community services in this fashion, and do it under the correct language. So that's the way I understand it, as best I can describe it.
So we've been waiting on the legislature, it isn't the attorneys that's caused that.
Well, that's mostly who's in the legislature, so, yes. I'm sure that we didn't.
Yeah, okay.